I'd spend millions of dollars to have my face plastered all over the internet. And for the first time, I've kind of just been quiet. The business was making a lot of money. And at the height of the business, I just decided I am not in the right mental space. Whenever I had downtime, I would send out 20 to 30 texts a day apologizing to people why I wasn't here, why I couldn't call them back. And that was exhausting. Like, something I'm doing is not right. I had to be the face of the business. That is a double-edged sword. The business is not revolved around you. Like, you're trying to build a business, not a brand. But the brand, it helps. And the hardest job of a CEO is realizing that.
Welcome back to another episode of And This. Today, I am here with a very special guest who's going to share a little bit about the multi-seven-figure business that he built, Power Your Launch, his passion for helping business owners expand and grow in their marketing strategies using paid traffic, as well as his recent sabbatical, also the mental shifts he's made as an entrepreneur throughout his journey. Please help me welcome my dear friend, Abu Fofanah. Hi, Abu.
Hey.
Hey, bestie.
I'm excited to be here.
First of all, how are you?
I'm good. Today I'm good. You know, I was a little overwhelmed earlier in the week. Well, I guess it's still early in the week, but I'm good. I'm good.
What have you been up to? Like, where you been? What you been doing?
Right. I think that this year, especially the last few months, I kind of been quiet because over the last like 6-7 years, I'd spend millions of dollars to have my face plastered all over the internet. And for the first time in the last few months, I've kind of just been quiet. I'm in this sabbatical, per se, trying to figure out what it is that I want to do.
I think that's important. I think moments of stillness are always important. I think that there are times where we just need to take a break, reset, and just sit in stillness. But what has that been like for you? Like, are you just sitting at home in the dark? Are you working out more? Like, what does your kind of stillness period look like?
Yeah, and to give it context, I am someone who struggles with being still because I'm so used to working all the time, every single day. And if I have downtime, I'll fill it with work. You know, that's how I operate. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with me, I was a serial entrepreneur. I was always starting different businesses. I could sit somewhere, hear someone talk about their problem, and I would come up with a solution. And so that's what led me to several of my businesses, and the most recent one, the Power Your Launch Marketing Accelerator, because I wanted to solve for business owners that were struggling to sell and put their business online. And so that's my DNA. My DNA is work, but I enjoy the work. And so when people would tell me things like, oh, you need to do things that you enjoy. And I'm like, wait, I think I already am. But what happened with that over time, it began to burn me out because I started to give so much of my time. I started to give so much because I wanted to have a big impact. And there's many ways you could have an impact. And I just chose the one that was very labor and manual and mentally intensive. And so there came a point where I had to make a decision, and I had to decide, okay, if I am to be still, what does that even look like? What does that even mean for someone like myself who's so used to working all the time? Yeah. And so I needed, I wouldn't say stillness to me is sitting in the dark. I think stillness is still having things that are mentally captivating. That's a mental gym for me, but is completely a pivot from what I'm used to doing. And so that's what I've been doing over these last few months. I've made a mental pivot, and I created a new mental gym that allows me to be only responsible for myself right now. And so that looks like, you know, weightlifting, running every day. You know, there was several months where I've done over like 150 miles a month, right? And ended up doing races, right? Like these were things that were mental gyms for me, you know, enrolling in different classes to learn different things that were of interest to me. So stillness to me is really about exploring my curiosity in other areas versus completely not doing anything, because that's difficult for me.
I love that, because that's what this podcast is about. That's what And This is about. It is exploring all of the things that you feel like you want to explore in this season of your life. So I love that you are actually taking the time to do that, because you've spent the last decade really helping others and exhausting yourself at the expense of helping others and wanting to have that impact. So and kudos to you.
No, I appreciate that. Trust me, it wasn't easy. Many people like yourself and a lot of people have been telling me this forever, that I need to, kind of sit down. So it's definitely not easy. And when I hear those words in the back of my mind, I'm just like, dang, like something I'm doing is not right. Something I'm doing is not working, and it's hard for me, especially people that are so used to solving everyone else's problems, but then when it comes to ourselves, it's really hard to take a step outside of us to really evaluate, okay, what exactly is happening here? What am I actually trying to do here? And so it's definitely hard, especially when there's not goals associated with it. Okay, I need to accomplish this next.
Were your goals always monetary? Was it always you tying your success to an actual financial number, to a KPI?
I don't think it is, right? But I think that the world, someone had asked me a question like, how much is, what is enough money, right?
Yeah.
What is it? And I was like,
I think I've asked you that. Bruh, I mean, it ain't like you're broke out here. You got some coins.
The person who's asking, if it's the IRS, I don't got no money.
But to your point, you also have other friends that make a lot of money. So with that, it's like, are you comparing yourself to those metrics and it's not enough?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm not comparing myself with my friend. It's like this innate feeling where when I was working in corporate, I knew that I had to be doing something for myself and something bigger. And then when I started doing something for myself, there's just this innate feeling that the platform or the vehicle that I've been using over these last several years isn't the actual vehicle that I need to be going towards next. And so there's something big inside of myself that I've always realized, and I'm trying to find what's going to get me closer to that. I know impact is one of my metrics, right? When I could tangibly see the impact that I'm doing, but the world just rewards you for your value that you give. So if you could give someone value, the world says, okay, here's the monetary associated with that value. So with me, I don't tie money directly, but I know I'm on the right path when the world says, okay, we're willing to give you this amount of value, right? Because you're bringing this value to whatever it is that you're doing. And so I just redirect that money into other areas, that I'm exploring. But I don't look at money as the only indicator, but it is an indicator that tells me that this is something that I'm doing that other people need, because they're willing to give me monetary in exchange for the value that I'm providing. Yeah.
So right now you're on this sabbatical, kind of taking a break. You have not closed your program. However, you're no longer coaching it, where you were coaching and giving weekly. I'm an OG of PYL. I was one of the second cohorts to participate in the program. And how many did you end with?
After a while, I just stopped counting the cohorts. It was thousands of people.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah.
And so now you're on this sabbatical where you're just kind of, let me pause, reset. I'm no longer going to be live coaching. People can still get access to the program though, right?
Right.
But what really prompted that?
Yeah, so I think it was several things. I was running this business and the business was making a lot of money. And, at the height of the business, I just decided you know what? I myself am not in the right mental space, emotional space. It had nothing to do with the business, but it took so much of me, so much of myself became the business. And so the only way in my mind at that time, again, I'm solving things based on the knowledge and tools that I have at that moment. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I probably look back at this and say I could have handled things a lot differently. But the way I knew how to handle it then, last year was I had all these things going on. And I think the last trigger that prompted was, the passing of, one of my, really, really close friends. And I think that was the trigger, because, like yourself and my close friend, they would always tell me, hey, you need to kind of pause and reflect on all the things that you've accomplished. Like, you never take time to actually understand what you just did, And so when that happened, I told myself, okay, there's no better time than now to kind of pause, to, grief, my friend that just passed, but to also, reevaluate everything. And so even though I was making money and I was helping people, I just lost a big part of myself. So I said, you know what? I am going to go on sabbatical. I don't know what that looks like. I don't even know what that means. and so I had posted it. And I think when I decided I was going on sabbatical, I posted something on social media.
Yeah.
And I wrote a blog post, and the title of that blog post was "Ask Somebody Else to Do It."
Get somebody else.
Because it just signified, like, I was just at this moment where everyone always kept reaching out to me, but I was like, look, like, I can't do anything anymore. I have to really try to figure out what it is, I need to do to fulfill myself in order to be able to keep moving.
And I really resonate with that because, as you know, I closed my, 6-figure clothing brand, and it wasn't in a bad place. But to your point, you mentally just weren't there anymore. And that's how I felt when I closed it. It's like the business necessarily isn't doing good, but I am not in the best space. So do you think that there's like something to be said with entrepreneurs and like not feeling happy when they're actually at the peak of success in their business?
Yeah, I think that it's a lot of different reasons. Like, there is the surface and then there's what's underneath it. Mm-hmm. And the surface, especially via social media, it's really glamorized, And so people don't think that, okay, nothing is going wrong, or your problems that you're having that's underneath the surface, money should be able to solve that.
Right.
And so that's why I remember there's someone that said, I wish everyone was rich so they realize, money doesn't solve all problems. Mm-hmm. And so underneath this, and this is something, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs. One that comes to mind is, Vanessa, who was also at the peak of, she's a YouTuber that was really
Vanessa
big on Vanessa Lau. On YouTube, and almost had 1 million subscribers on YouTube. Her business were making multi-millions, and then she decided to walk away from everything. And so I remember when I was thinking about my sabbatical, I remember reading her sabbatical that she had posted a year prior, and I'm just like, all the feelings that she was feeling that was underneath the business, right, underneath the surface, were a lot of the things that I was feeling, like overwhelmed. Now you're in this new space leading people, and you're trusting people with your business, and people sometimes aren't who you think they are, right? And so then you have to deal with that fallout, and then people on social media, and so there's all these different angles. And then if you have a partner or if you have a family that you're not there for, if you're not there for yourself or you're not there for your friends, you're not building that rapport and relationship. So there were all these things that were underneath the surface I think a lot of entrepreneurs are dealing with, but they don't know how to deal with, because a lot of times we are the first entrepreneurs in our family, and we don't have a community of other, not entrepreneurs, but other successful entrepreneurs, right, that have been in our shoes. And so what was underneath the surface was, for me, the biggest reason, and I'm sure for many entrepreneurs listening to this right now, they're probably nodding their head along like, yeah, on the surface, it might look like I got it figured out,
right.
But underneath this,
it's a whole shit show.
Correct. It's a lot going on.
So as you've taken this break, this pause, this sabbatical, do you think the next iteration of Abu is going to be going back into the same space? Like, are you going back to coaching entrepreneurs with ads? I mean, you're the best to do it, but like, what does this next you look like? Or during this time, have you realized it's time for me to move into other things?
Yeah, so I feel like, years ago, I was at this inflection point, and out of that grew Abu 2.0. And now I'm at this other inflection point. Now I'm about to hit 3.0. And I don't want to do anything that I've done in the past, and I want to learn from the past, I want to learn from my shortcomings, as a leader, as a CEO, as a friend, as a son, et cetera, the things that I wasn't there for because I was so focused on my business. But I want to create a different type of relief in my life, right? Mental relief. And I think that is really around, making sure that the people that I am responsible for are taken care of. I built businesses in the past that were very public facing. I had to be the face of the business. I had to drive the business. And that is a double-edged sword. I've done it so many times now. It's a double-edged sword when you also have to be the salesperson. I'm not saying if you're just starting your business, right, yesterday or today, understand that you're going to have to be the face of the business to a certain extent, right? But I became the face of the business for the last 7 years, right?
Right.
And so there was a point where I should have stepped back. But because I was the face of it, there was a lot of associations. And so that really was hard to disassociate myself from the brand, because I tried it in the past to, remove myself, and there was a lot of nuances there and et cetera. But I think as I'm dreaming up of, what I want life to look like moving forward as I step into, another stage in my career, it's really being behind the scenes and moving things, right? Moving the chess pieces, being behind the scenes, and making a lot of money that no one's asking me about, people I'm not meeting for the first time are asking me for $25K, right?
Who are you?
And so and that took a toll on me because I'm such a giver, and when I say no, now I'm on social media that I'm a mean person because someone I just met asked me for this large sum of money. And so it was really, really difficult for me to navigate that very in front, being in front of the business and camera, et cetera.
It's so interesting that you said that, because I shared in a previous episode 6 lessons that I would have done differently, with starting out. And the first thing that I said was, I would have stayed behind the scenes. I would have absolutely stayed behind the scenes. I think it's a certain point. I think it's a certain aspect to your point, like that you have to kind of be front and center when you're first starting out, because nobody knows you, right? Nobody knows you. You probably have limited funds, but then at what point is it like, okay, do you now kind of take a step back? And I wonder, and I'm going to ask you this, do you feel like you had missed the mark of like stepping behind the scenes? Like there was an opportunity to go behind the scenes, but you were too far into it and you could no longer do it? Like when can an entrepreneur really like figure out, hey, it's time for me to go behind the scenes? Because I am totally there. Like I literally journaled.
Yeah.
Like I want to stay behind the scenes, but I still want to make a bunch of money.
Yeah.
And I don't want you knowing how I'm making the money. I don't need you in my business about making the money, but like just know that it's moving over here.
Yeah.
But I just want to be off the grid.
Yeah, and I think it's possible. And sometimes people get into a business where it takes off and no one knows that, who they, are and et cetera like that. Sometimes that does happen in your favor without you doing anything, right?
Yeah.
It's just sort of, the motion, I think other times it's like, one, when you've had success in prior businesses, you have a little bit more experience and know-how and know that the business is not revolved around you. Like you're trying to build a business, not a brand, Mm-hmm. And so, but the brand, it helps, right? Like a lot of, whether you like him or not, Elon Musk, his companies, the reason why a lot of them get so much investment and capital up front, especially, when you're raising, because of the brand, right? Like his brand enhances his companies. I remember I met Neil Patel once in, New York, out in Brooklyn, New York. But I was listening to a podcast of his, and they had asked him the question, how much did you make last year? And I think he said like $100 million, right? And then the host asked him, how much of that was because of the Neil Patel brand? And he was like, probably 75 million, right? Wow. So there are instances where you have to lead with the brand, but I think that he's such a smart entrepreneur because of experience. And I think we've gone through 1, 2, 3 businesses where our next business, we're just going to build it a different way.
Right.
And so I think the majority of us, we have to learn through experience to then say, okay, well, let's build this business a different way. It's not about us. Like, I will hire a face, right? I will hire someone to be in a Spanish market, someone to be in a French market. Like, I will do those things because I understand it's not about me being front and center if we're making revenue and acquiring customers and growing, right? Those are the things that are most important. So I have to stop seeing myself as a CEO, and see myself as the owner, the GM that's trying to put people in place to execute the processes that I've already built. And so I think there's a mindset shift that happens, and there also experience helps, you when you're trying to rebuild something from the ground up again.
So I want to ask, what are your thoughts on like the art of letting go? Because I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs, they want to let their business go, but they're so attached to it. It's their baby. But then there's also these tough market conditions, like things aren't the same as they were when I first started PYL and running ads, like you would make money like that off of ads. You didn't have to do anything. You just had to run the ad, right? So sometimes it's, the market shifts. Sometimes it's personal. So how have you mastered really the art of letting go? Because you've had to let go of your career on Wall Street. You've recently let go of businesses. You're going into new spaces. So what are your thoughts, and how do you think about the art of letting go, and how should entrepreneurs navigate the art of letting go?
Are you a product-based business owner that's ready to scale? I've compiled my industry experience and knowledge into bite-sized resources that you can access anytime, anywhere at jasmineboundary.shop. You'll get actionable insight, advanced strategies, and in-depth knowledge on how to grow your product-based business. Visit jasmineboundary.shop today, and let's take your brand to the next level. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah, I think it's such a great question, but it's such a hard answer, right? It's a hard answer because the art of letting go is almost like breaking a piece of your identity, right? So much of your identity is wrapped up in that business that you've been building over the last few years. So much of your identity is, in that business that you started out of your mom's kitchen or the garage, or, so there's so much history there, and it's almost like your baby, right? So it's so hard to then disconnect from it. There's so many people that are operating businesses that they should have let go years ago, right? And when you ask them, when have you been in business? They're like, 10 years ago, but they have no sales to show for it. Yeah. They have no customers to show for it, And you always wonder, well, why are you holding on to this thing? You're not even actively doing it, but it's something they created. Like a lot of people, they've never created something and seen it come to life. Creating something and seeing it come to life is different than seeing it come to life and then building it. It's completely different skills. And so there are a lot of people that have ideas, but they're not people that execute those ideas. And then there are people, so that's group one. The second group of people, they start running a business. It's great year one. They acquire customers, a lot of times people that already know them. And then when it's time to acquire people that don't know them, they start having challenges. And then they come to this realization that maybe they don't actually have a great business. They had great people that supported them. Right? Then there's those buckets of people, and a lot of times they're in denial, right? They're in denial of how much their business could grow. No, and this happens. This happened to me myself, right? This happens all the time. And then there are those people that they were running a business when the market conditions were favorable.
Talk about it. Like that means them COVID businesses. Right? He's talking about the COVID business 2020, babies that ran it up.
You could start anything. And for some reason, the wave was on your back. The wind was on your sail, right? You were sailing easily, but businesses aren't refined or, aren't success based on just the good seasons. And so when the bad seasons came, And you actually have to work. You actually have to roll up your sleeve. You actually have to market your business. You actually have to, refine your product. You actually have to talk to your customers. When you actually have to go out there and get it, you realize that a lot of these people that build businesses are not going to survive because they're not willing to do those aspects, right? That's actually running a business, right? And so when you have to do more than what's required, that's actually the business aspect of it. And so you have those group of people that were struggling. So all these individuals, the thing that they have in common is that a lot of times they'll hold on to this business that's not producing anymore. Right? Because it's part of who they are and it's their identity. Yeah. And they may get a client every few months out the year, but they're in the red at the end of the year. They actually don't make money. They're better off learning from someone to refine their skill on the other areas that they're weak in, right? You could be great at marketing, but you're not good in selling. Yep. And so you're running this marketing business, but you're not making any sales. You have to realize, and the hardest job of a CEO is realizing that, hey, I don't know everything, but if you can't admit that to yourself, then you're always going to be stuck. And then because I don't know anything, I need to go learn it. Yep. Right. And so they're like, the learning part, no, I'm not willing to do that. Right. And so they're holding on to this thing. Here's another layer of why people hold on to businesses that they should let go. Identity. Right. We talked about identity, but not only what they think their identity is, but what other people think their identity is.
That's good.
They are like, other people know me for this.
Yeah.
This is all they know me for. I'm the makeup girl. I do everyone's makeup.
So I have to stay doing this because I'm known for this.
Correct. Yep. And so they allow people to create this box around them. And they believe that they can't do anything else because that's what people know them for. Yep. And so they box themselves in and they end up holding on to businesses longer than they should. And so letting go is a very hard thing because you have to be self-aware. I think for me personally, I had to realize, because I have experience, I've ran other businesses in the past that I let go, which was very, very challenging for me at that time. This time around, I made I made a decision based off of, hey, I've done this before. If I were to build another business, I know I'm more than capable. So if I let this go, it's okay because I know I've learned a lot. Like my first business that I ever created, a clothing brand, and it was the hardest thing for me to let go. But I came to the realization and I said, wait a second, I learned so much from this thing. And then if I were to build another business, I'll build it in half the time.
Exactly. And you build it differently.
And that's exactly what happened. I built it in half the time based on the skill set that I already acquired. Yep. So we know a lot. So I let go because I know that I learned all that I can from where I currently am. And so it's easy for me to let go because I accept that. And so people have to be willing to accept that. I know that was a long answer, but I just wanted to let you know kind of what goes on in people's minds depending on the stage they're in and trying to figure out, should I let this business go?
Yeah. So I would love to know your perspective on what self-care for a successful Black man looks like. Like, what is self-care to you? Because as women, we have no idea.
Yeah. I'm the worst person to ask this question because I think for me, when I hang out with my other male friends who, have reached a certain level of success, it's different depending on if they're married or if they're, a bachelor out here. And when they're married, a lot of their self-care, revolves around having quiet time, and that time could look like, doing some childhood activity, right, that they're used to doing or just hanging out with their friends as well. So I think it really looks different, self-care. For me, when I went on sabbatical and people were telling me, oh, you need to do some self-care stuff, I literally went on Google and I'm like, what is self-care? And all I saw were images of like women, at the spa, getting massages. And so although those things are enjoyable for a lot of people, for me, when I'm there, I'm just counting down the time. I'm like, okay, when, I just got this new idea. And so for me, I had to kind of redefine, well, what does that look like for myself? And so for me, I started picking up things that I enjoy, you know, like hiking, like camping, running, working out. But to some people, that does not look like self-care.
Right.
They're like, well, you're exerting more energy, right? You're actually not. But for me, it was. And then the most important thing I did for self-care, especially I see a lot of, you know, successful men do, is that they carve out space for themselves in their calendar. Because a lot of time their space is associated with like their mom, their dad, you know, their, you know, everyone else, because they're so in their business that when they have a slither of time, they have to spend it somewhere else, and it's not on themselves necessarily. And so I created time for myself. And what I did with that time was I started writing out my thoughts, and I created a blog. And this blog is part of my self-care, and it allows me to take my ideas, take my thoughts, and combine them with the things that I'm curious about and things I'm interested about. This year, I've read over 15 books, right? But I use that information, I use what's going on in life, and I craft something. And this blog is almost like whenever I finish a blog post, it's a big relief for me. It's like, wow, I got a lot of the things that was mentally exhausting over the last few months, last few weeks off of my chest. And so for me, self-care looks different. Can I do the things that the monetary things? Yeah. Can I go book the spa? Can I do this? Can I fly to Paris? You know, can I, you know, go on vacation? Like I could do all those things, but those things don't fulfill me as much as now, like my own time and space and doing activities that I enjoy with people.
So with that, has this sabbatical been what you thought it would be?
Not at all.
What did you think it would be?
I thought that I would be in a robe. I don't know why I had a robe. I'd be in a robe and I'd just be living at some sort of resort and being fed grapes, you know, being bathed. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm like, yeah, self-care, you know, it's all white around me, you know. But I had to be realistic. I wouldn't enjoy that, you know, like that's what I was visioning based off what everyone was telling me to do. But I wouldn't have enjoyed that. And so instead, I've kind of been off the grid. You know, I give myself restrictions on social media. You know, I give myself restrictions on phone usage because I'm just trying to spend more time thinking. I'm really fulfilled when I have time to think. And it's not anything actionable. It's just I have time to think. I could write my thoughts out. And that really fulfills me in a way because I'm not used to having that time, you know? Most of my time when I was running and operating the business was whenever I had downtime, I would send out like 20 to 30 texts a day apologizing to people why I wasn't here, why I couldn't call them back, why I wasn't, you know? And that was exhausting. So now, because I'm offline, because everyone knows that I'm on sabbatical, it's almost like people don't expect me to reach back out to them. And I'm like, great, you know, this helps me out. Really, this truly helps me out. But then there are those people that feel a certain type of way because I'm not reaching out. And I have to keep reminding them like this is my time, right? Like I'm trying to figure this thing out, but people don't want to hear that. So I had to create these restrictions and boundaries for myself and be okay with not being the person I was where everyone reached out to me when they needed something.
So one of the things you said was being off the grid, right? Like this sabbatical has allowed you to be off the grid. But for those entrepreneurs that know they need to let this business go, they desire to be off the grid. They no longer have the energy to put into this business. However, how we talked about, the business still may be doing well, still may be making money, or it may not. How in either of those scenarios could they go off the grid? More interested in how could one that's not doing well in business but desires to really go off the grid, but they're like, I need to make this money. Right. I have to show up. I have to do this because this is how I support myself.
Yeah, and I think, you know, like, again, there's layers of groups of people, but I think, like, for example, one group could self-identify, like, I've learned so much from my business over the last few years. Let me go and get a stable income. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of times you even have bigger opportunities because You have more resources to leverage. And I always tell people, if you could do that, and it's not forever, nothing you decide to do, you choose, is forever, right? And so you could decide, you know what, I need a year to figure things out, but I have this massive skill set that I know someone else could utilize. Let me go. Yet, okay, all your time won't be your time, but that's okay. It's a trade-off. Yeah. You'll never get 100% of exactly what you want when you're trying to figure things out. You have to trade off to see, can I see myself here? Right? Okay, I'm fulfilling the capital aspect because I'm also taking care of family. And so it's a means to an end. And that's okay. It may be for a year, maybe for 2 years. And I think there's another group where you have to ask yourself a question of, how much capital do I need to make in order to maintain a lifestyle that is manageable? Not a lifestyle where, you're rolling, you're buying cars, every month, like a lifestyle that's manageable. You may think it's $30K a month because that's your current burn rate. But if you start cutting expenses back, if you start cutting unnecessary, things that you're spending on, you're eating out, you're spending $200-$300 a day on food. If you start cutting those things back, you may realize, okay, all I actually need is $5-7K a month in order to maintain. And I could do that in my business by running a solo business, right? Or hiring one person. I can make $10K a month, but at least I'll have everything covered to give myself the time. Because the time's more valuable than the money. Right? If I give myself the time, then I can make more money, especially if you're a skilled entrepreneur. If I give myself more time, I can make more money. And so that's what I would say, to those two groups of people that are operating the business. Hey, it's okay to go. Look, if there's only 2 people I told myself I would work for, they called me. If Jeff Bezos called me, I'm like, all right, Jeff, all right, I'll come run Amazon. Don't worry about it, right? And so there's nothing wrong with working for a company. Especially most of the millionaires that I know, a lot of my mentors, they worked for companies, right? They were probably one of the first few people at the company, or they created or patented something at the company, and now they're multi-millionaires, right? Then I know a smaller group of entrepreneurs are actually liquid millions of dollars, right? Because that's different. That is different. Liquid millions of dollars, right? And so there's levels to this, but there's no wrong path unless you allow your ego to lead, right? If you allow your ego to lead, then there's always going to be a frustration because you don't want other people to see you a certain way. And that's the hardest thing to do when you're trying to figure things out. It doesn't matter how other people see you because you have to remember they're afraid to follow their dreams anyways.
Facts.
Right?
Facts.
You're the man or woman in the arena. You're the person taking action. Right? Like you are good. Like you are what they strive to be. And so you have to understand that you looking foolish, doing things that you're stretching yourself to do, doing things that you're trying to do is actually success, right? It's actually the thing that you need to do in order to move forward. People that are criticizing you, that are telling you the things that you can't do, that have done nothing, that are telling you that, well, you can't do that, right? Well, you're the makeup girl, right? You're the clothing boutique girl, like you can't do these other things. And by the time they stop talking, they realize that I remember her, like, I remember when she used to do hair, remember when she used to do makeup, like they can't wrap their mind around how other people achieve success. And it's because they're simply doing the things that may make you look foolish, right? That may make you look like, oh my God, this person looks lost, but they're actually finding themselves, right? And so that's what I think.
So I think like sitting still is good, but some people think that sitting with your thoughts too long isn't great. Because then we start to overthink, we start to overanalyze, and all the mindset trash, tends to creep in. So as you've been on this sabbatical and sitting with your thoughts, you mentioned, when you can think, you operate better, you fill your cup, but have there been any unwanted thoughts that have crept in? If you want to share what some of those thoughts are, please do. But I'd love to hear how you've been able to combat those thoughts, because I don't think that a lot of men are able to just really sit and share their feelings. Like you guys are just wired differently, right? So automatically you're like, okay, I need to get back. I need to get back to doing this. I need to get back to doing, let me go work out. And so you don't sit with those thoughts and those feelings. So I love to hear.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think for me, it's definitely been a challenge, right? I think some of the things I do to supplement whenever I do have feelings like that is I lean into, like, you know, I told you I did like 150 miles a month, right? And so I was like, well, running allowed me to clear my mind and push all those feelings to the outskirts, right? But I think when I am spending so much time trying to gather my thoughts, there are things that reoccur, right? Like one was, again, one of the biggest reasons I took time off was like the grieving, right? Like I was grieving a friend that I lost that was such a big part of my life and everything, you know, that I did. She really helped me during a pivotal time in my life where I was trying to figure out what direction to go. Yeah. And then her family did too. So it's extremely challenging because now I'm having to make sure, you know, she has siblings, that I'm there for them and whatever they need, right? So now I'm not even thinking about my feelings, right? I'm thinking about other people's feelings because I'm like, well, nothing that I'm going through is important right now, right? And so I need to make sure that they know I'm there, right? So there's that feeling, and that coincides with another feeling of being, you know, needed and wanted the last few years, is like the people-pleasing feeling, right? Whereas I'm like, dang, like a lot of people who I thought were my friends, you know, now that I need my own time, you know, and I'm not giving the way that I used to give, a lot of those relationships, they had no legs to stand on, right? Like when I am of value to other people, then what's reciprocated is they are not a value of me, but they value me, right? They value me. They're not of value to me, but they value me in a lot different way. And so there's these coinciding feelings that I had to navigate through. And, you know, I started like doing search for therapy and things like that, but don't get me started on the process of finding a therapist, because as someone who's a process guy of, you know, supply chain, and it should be easy, but it's really not easy. I'm finding a therapist because they'll ask you, what are you looking for? You're like, well, like I filled out the 2-hour form that you had me fill out. And so then there's that frustration, right? Because now I'm like, well, I don't feel like I'm getting what I need in this moment to really navigate how I feel and the things that I'm going through, because two things could be true. One, it could be past trauma, right? But two, it could be current. And so I need to almost work on both of these things coincide, right, at the same time. Whereas a lot of times it's isolated. Here, I'm like, it doesn't work when not only you're an entrepreneur, but you are the face of your brand. You are, you know, a refuge, right? And you have to take care of your family. And you, like, there's all these layers that, you know, is really difficult, you know, to navigate. And so I just had to lean into people who were, and I had to find these people that were more, that went through the path that I went through, to ask them what they did. And a lot of times they lean into other community or mentorship because they found they had the same frustrations that I had, you know, and whether trying to find therapy or whether trying to get their thoughts down or whether trying to deal with grief, like, you know, it's always hard, you know, and some of them tell me they still deal with it, right? And so I think for me, I don't think I have a resolution. You know, I think that it is what it is, and I'm just trying my best to navigate all these different emotions and feelings.
I want to ask, what do you think your audience craves from you versus what you crave for yourself as this new iteration of Abu emerges? Yeah,
so I think that, you know, my audience, when we think about social media and et cetera, like, a lot of them are just going to see me as someone who taught marketing, did ads, and, you know, I have to be okay with that, right? Like, doesn't mean I have to lean into that, but I have to understand that that's what brought them in, right? That's why they follow, et cetera. And I will lose some audience as well. So I think they probably crave, you know, probably a lot of different things, such as, you know, how to acquire more customers, how to build a business, you know, marketing. Some of them crave for me to talk about relationships, right? Some of them crave for me to let them know if I'm in a relationship, right? So I think there's all these layers of why people follow you. And I think for me, as I think about, what's next and things like that, I think I'm trying to build more offline more than anything. And if I come online, it's just because I want to be online. If I post, it's because I want to post. Yeah. But it has nothing to do with the things that I'm building offline, right? The things I'm building offline don't need an online presence. And so I think that's what I'm really trying to hone in on and focus on and build out those skills that allow me to be offline.
Wow. Guys, this episode has been so good. I mean, it's just been like, my heart is just full. Especially if you are a male that's listening. I don't think that we really get a lot of great male perspective in terms of like mentality, thoughts and feelings, and like how to navigate those things. So thank you so much, Abu, for being here. My last question I want to ask you. And this is all about being multi-layered, multi-dimensional, multi-passionate. And as we talked about, allowing yourself to be curious and trying these different things. So when I say the words "and this," what do you think of?
Man, when you say "and this," I almost think of two things, right? It's a closing of a chapter and the beginning of the next, And so for me, it is a period and a comma when I hear "and this," because for me personally, I've closed the chapter, comma, and I'm ready to do something different. And so that's what comes to mind. And also letting other people know that you can do that as well, right? Like, it's okay for you to say, you know what, I've been doing this thing, my heart's not in it anymore, the market conditions may have changed, I'm really passionate about something else now, or I have this curiosity and I want to do more research around this. It's okay to say, okay, I am going to pursue this now, right? Or I'm going to take the time I need in order to retool some things in my personal life and then pursue the business again. And so for me, and this is a period and a comma, you could close something out, you could start something new at the same time.
I love that. I am so excited about this episode. Thank you so much for your transparency, your authenticity. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being here. I know that this episode is going to bless a lot of people. And so thank you again, Abu Fofanah. Guys, we'll see you on the next episode of And This.